Faith and Freedom, Thomas Jefferson and the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom. Prior to his death, Thomas Jefferson left behind specific instructions for the obelisk monument that was to mark his grave. In addition to sketching out the exact size and shape of the stone, he requested the following epitaph. Here was buried Thomas Jefferson, author of the Declaration of American Independence, of the Statute of Virginia for Religious Freedom, and father of the University of Virginia. These contributions were, in his words, the testimonials that I have lived, I wish most to be remembered. It is curious that with all of his contributions, such as the political offices he held, President of the United States being one, he selected these three specific memories. Author of the Declaration of American Independence is obvious. Father of the University of Virginia is understandable. But the astonishing choice is the author of the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom. Not that this is unimportant, but of all his achievements, this one is often overlooked. Jefferson crafted this statute not in Philadelphia or one of the other busy cities of the day. He wrote it while staying in a small Virginia town on the Rappahannock River named Fredericksburg. In 1777, Jefferson stayed at Whedon's Tavern, then called Smith's, in Fredericksburg, where he penned this life-altering document. The Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom established the right of every man and woman to their own religious beliefs and opinions. The Virginia General Assembly passed the landmark statute in 1786, and in 1789 it became the basis for the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. The event not only had a lasting effect on the country, it more specifically had a permanent effect on the city where the proposition was written. In 1932, the Fredericksburg City Council commissioned St. Clair Brooks, a stonemason, to erect a monument commemorating Jefferson's bill. It is built from stones sent from churches across the country. Each year in January, the Religious Freedom Day Parade hits the streets of downtown Fredericksburg to commemorate the anniversary of Jefferson drafting the statute. However, the story of Jefferson's experiences in Fredericksburg and drafting the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom is much more than just a memorial and a parade. In order to understand Jefferson, you must first examine Jefferson. Politically, Jefferson has been best defined as an enlightened nationalist. As so, he was a proponent of the theory that all areas had to be governed by reason. This, of course, included religion. In a letter to Benjamin Rush, he stated, "For the use of reason, everyone is responsible to the God who has planted it in his breast, as a light for his guidance, and that by which alone he will be judged. I have sworn upon the altar of God eternal hostility against every form of tyranny over the mind of man." To support this predictability, a new nation required complete religious freedom and separation of church and state. Before the American Revolution, the state of Virginia had a single official church, the Church of England. Those citizens of the crown that opposed the church were often discriminated against and prosecuted. Jefferson later referred to these incidents as the severest contests in which I have ever been engaged. Jefferson realized that the only way to ensure that the state's and later the country's citizens had the freedom to practice the religion as they saw it was to draft an official proclamation. Without religious freedom, nobles and church officials threatened to create a holy aristocracy. Due to Jefferson's devout theism and a firm belief that his relationship with God was a very personal matter, his assertion that he owes account to none other for his faith or his worship was the major theoretical foundation to his statute. Religion remains a hotly debated aspect of Thomas Jefferson's legacy. Some claim that he was simply a deist, while others have accused him of having no faith at all. Jefferson would have been officially categorized as a Reformed Protestant and was raised as an Episcopalian. However, his tendency for wanting to possess a broader knowledge and understanding of all things led him to be influenced by English deists who believed in the concept that a higher power did indeed exist, but that man's affairs were not under its influence. Prayer, on the other hand, was not something that inspired Jefferson. As one who rejected the divinity of Christ and did not believe in any of the miracles that were found in the Bible, he privately doubted the benefits of prayer. That said, he did pray publicly as part of the obligations of his office. He clearly understood the need to convince the citizens of the country that it was a responsibility of humans to worship God. Jefferson rejected the divinity of Jesus, but he believed that Christ was a deeply interesting and profoundly important moral and ethical teacher. He also subscribed to the belief that it was in Christ's moral and ethical teachings that a civilized society should be conducted. Cynical of the miracle accounts in the New Testament, Jefferson was convinced that the authentic words of Jesus had been contaminated. Firmly believing that reason could be added in place of what he considered to be supernatural embellishments, Jefferson worked tirelessly to compose a shortened version of the Gospels, titled The Philosophy of Jesus of Nazareth. The subtitle stated that the work was extracted from the account of his life and the doctrines as given by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. In 1820, Jefferson returned to his controversial New Testament research. This time, he completed a much more ambitious work titled The Life and Morals of Jesus of Nazareth, extracted textually from the Gospels in Greek, Latin, French, and English. The text of the New Testament appears in 4 parallel columns in 4 languages. Jefferson omitted the words that he thought were inauthentic and returned those he believed were original. The resulting work is commonly known as the Jefferson Bible. The Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom was originally referred to as Bill No. 82, a bill for establishing religious freedom. In October of 1776, the First General Assembly selected a 5-man committee of revisers to review the existing laws and redraft them for an independent Virginia. The primary responsibility of rewriting these existing laws assumed by the 3 attorneys on the committee. They were Thomas Jefferson, George Wythe, and Edmund Pendleton. George Mason and Thomas Ludwell Lee were also members. The bill for the revision of Virginia laws initiated the project and was submitted by Jefferson in the Virginia House of Burgesses on October 15, 1776. Jefferson authored the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom in January of 1777. Unfortunately, his statute was tabled after receiving a tremendous opposition by influential members of the Church of England. In 1784, Patrick Henry introduced a resolution into the General Assembly for a religious tax assessment, which was supported by members of several denominations. Taxpayers could allocate their money to the denomination of their choice. Proponents of the resolution sought to support religion in general, rather than a particular denomination, to remind citizens to respect ethical principles. Jefferson's close friend and confidant, James Madison, saw an opportunity to reintroduce his bill. In the summer of 1785, Madison penned a sensational petition titled Memorial and Remonstrance Against Religious Assessments. In it, he urged the legislature not to pass the General Assessment Bill. Madison argued that religion should be left to the conviction and conscience of every man. Religion, he wrote, is a right like other rights and liberties, and if we do not want to allow the legislature to sweep away all of our fundamental rights, then we must say that we must leave this particular right untouched and sacred. Copies of Madison's petition were distributed throughout Virginia and helped create a storm of widespread protest. It was signed and sent to the legislature by thousands of residents who opposed the notion of an established church. Numerous other petitions, with over 11,000 signatures, were also sent to the legislators' desks, and 9 out of 10 condemned the bill of general assessment. Responding to the public outcry, when the legislature reconvened, it passed Jefferson's bill on January 16, 1786, by a margin of 60 to 27. Unfortunately, Jefferson was not present to witness the legislative process, as he was serving as the U.S. Minister to France. When Jefferson learned of the bill's passage, he had the statute translated into French and Italian language and distributed to as many people as possible. Jefferson believed that the government's relationship with the church should be indifferent, religion being neither persecuted nor given any special status. Contrary to popular belief, the term separation of church and state does not appear anywhere in the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom. It can be found in Jefferson's reply to the Danbury Baptist Association in the state of Connecticut. It read, "Gentlemen, the affectionate sentiments of esteem and approbation with which you are so good to express towards me, on behalf of the Danbury Baptist Association, give me the highest satisfaction. My duties dictate a faithful and zealous pursuit of the interests of my constituents, and in proportion as they are persuaded of my fidelity to those duties, the discharge of them becomes more and more pleasing. Believing with you that religion is a matter which lies solely between man and his God, that he owes account to none other for his faith or his worship, that the legitimate powers of government reach actions only and not opinions, I contemplate with sovereign reverence that act of the whole American people, which declared that their legislature should make no law respecting the establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, thus building a wall of separation between church and state. Adhering to this expression of the supreme will of the nation, on behalf of the rights of conscience, I shall see with sincere satisfaction the progress of those sentiments which tend to restore to man all his natural rights, convinced he has no natural right in opposition to his social duties. I reciprocate your kind prayers for the protection and blessing of the common Father and Creator of man, and tender you to yourselves and your religious association assurances of my high respect and esteem. T.H. Jefferson, January 1, 1802. Freedom of religion was not originally drafted in the original U.S. Constitution to Jefferson's liking. In a letter sent from Paris to his friend and fellow founder James Madison on December 20th, 1787, 2 months after the document was signed, he wrote, "I will now add what I do not like, the first omission of a Bill of Rights providing clearly and without the aid of sophisms for freedom of religion." Freedom of religion was adopted on December 15, 1791, as the first of 10 amendments that constitute the Bill of Rights. It prevents the government from making laws that regulate an establishment of religion or that prohibit the free exercise of religion. The First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution was directly influenced by the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom. It prevents the government from making laws that regulate an establishment of religion or that prohibit the free exercise of religion, or abridge the freedom of speech, the freedom of the press, the freedom of assembly, or to the right to petition the government for redress or grievances. The amendment commands government to have no interest in theology or ritual. It admonishes government to be interested in allowing religious freedom to flourish, whether the result is to produce Catholics, Jews, or Protestants, or in turn the people toward the path of Buddha, or in end a predominantly Muslim nation, or to produce in the long run atheists or agnostics. On matters of this kind, government must be neutral. This freedom plainly includes freedom from religion, with the right to believe, speak, write, publish, or advocate anti-religious programs. Its prohibition on the establishment of religion includes many things, from prayer in widely varying government settings, over financial aid for religious individuals and institutions, or to comment on religious questions. The amendment also makes clear that it sought to protect the free exercise of religion, or what might be called free exercise equality. Free exercise is the liberty of persons to reach, hold, practice, and change beliefs freely according to the dictates of their own conscience. The Free Exercise Clause prohibits governmental interference with religious belief and within limited religious practice. Freedom of religion means freedom to hold an opinion or belief, or not to take action in violation of social duties or subversive good order. Jefferson's experiences in Fredericksburg are documented. When Jefferson and his comrades arrived in the city in 1777, they were met with a town bristling with military activity. Troops were drilling in the public square and filled the crowded streets, buildings, and shops. Awaiting travel orders were the men of the 2nd Virginia and the 7th Virginia, who were ordered here on January 9th for a rendezvous just prior to marching to join General Washington at the front. By the time Jefferson arrived in Fredericksburg, 60 of the more than 400 battles and skirmishes of the war had already taken place. On January 12th, the very day before Jefferson and his committee began their work, General Hugh Mercer died from bayonet wounds suffered 9 days earlier at the Battle of Princeton. Mercer's apothecary shop stood just 1 block away from where the committee met. Today, Mercer's statue rises 100 yards from the Religious Freedom Monument memorializing Jefferson's bill. As the city developed, a rift remained between the set of citizens of the city who found differences in social, political, and spiritual aspects of life. Slaveholding was a particularly sensitive issue, as the town's white citizens were divided along pro- and anti-slavery lines. For his entire life, Jefferson was surrounded by the practice of slavery. In 1764, he inherited 20 slaves from his father. 10 years later, he inherited 135 more from his father-in-law, John Wales, who was involved in the importation of enslaved Africans to Virginia. Over 400 slaves lived and worked at Monticello. Close to 100 served at Poplar Forest. Slave labor was also the economic force behind many of Jefferson's enterprises. It seems that his lifestyle demanded the practice, regardless of his prejudices against it. Ironically, throughout his career, both politically and personally, Jefferson repeatedly voiced his displeasure with the institution of slavery. He often referred to it as an abominable crime, a moral depravity, a hideous blot, and a fatal stain. Jefferson's slaves did have the freedom to practice their religion. They would often hold formal and informal prayer meetings on weeknights in their slave cabins while holding more visible ceremonies outside on Sundays. Preachers licensed by the church and hired by the master were supplemented by slave preachers. There is no evidence that Jefferson hired a white preacher for his slaves. Texts from the Bible, which most slaves could not read, were explicated by verses from the spirituals. Records indicate a rich spiritual life at Monticello, incorporating both European and African traditions, including Christianity. It is documented that an enslaved woodworker named John Hemmings and his wife Priscilla held prayer meetings in their cabin, and there is at least one reference to a baptism. Before they got down to business, Jefferson stopped in at a local watchmaker to have his timepiece mended and dropped into the local barbershop as well. There he saw John Atkinson, the wig maker and barber whose shop was located on the southwest corner of the intersection of George and Caroline Streets, just down from the tavern where they would stay. Jefferson's visit in 1777 was not his only social call to the city of Fredericksburg. He often traveled to the city en route to and from his estate, Monticello. In May of 1766, he spent 2 or 3 days with his friends the Fitzhughs, William and Anne, on his way to Annapolis, Maryland. This visit took place at the Somerset Plantation, since their stately home, Chatham Manor, was not completed until 1771. On August 24, 1790, Jefferson wrote to Fitzhugh. He wrote, "If I go by way of Fredericksburg, I shall surely have the pleasure to call and ask how you do." In letters of August 7, 1790 and September 5, 1790, Jefferson later wrote, "I shall be happy in seeing you in Chatham." The location that has received credit for lodging Jefferson and his confidants while formulating the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom is Whedon's Tavern, temporarily known as Smith's at the time of their stay. According to local historian Paula S. Felder, the tavern occupied lots number 25 and 26 in the northwest corner of Caroline and William Street. Others believe the nearby Rising Sun Tavern at 1304 Caroline Street was the location of the historic site. It was first known as Gordon's Ordinary, a public drinking house that served both locals and passers-by. The original owner was John Gordon, who immigrated to Virginia from Scotland in 1721. In 1735, he came to the city and established the inn. He remained its proprietor until his death in 1749. Margaret Gordon, his wife, took over running the inn, renaming it Mrs. Gordon's Tavern. Her daughter Catherine married the then Captain George Weedon, who purchased the tavern in its entirety in 1773. The inn flourished under Weedon's ownership, and he became a respected and influential member of the community. Other highly influential patrons who made the tavern a regular stop included George Washington. Many ledgers in Washington's journals during the early 1770s listed dining with political dignitaries at Weedon's Tavern. Playing cards was another favorite pastime at the inn. It is said that as a frequent loser, Washington complained that the Fredericksburg locals were too smart for him. As time went on, the tavern began to regularly serve those outside of the town, such as the adjacent Spotsylvania County. When the Revolutionary War approached, Weedon took a lieutenant colonel's commission in the 3rd Virginia Regiment. He eventually leased the tavern to William Smith in March of 1776 to join the militia full-time. Smith planned to continue the inn's service. Weedon was promoted to the rank of full colonel, and the 3rd Virginia was soon ordered to join the Continental Army in New York City. When General Benedict Arnold and General William Phillips threatened Virginia in 1781, Weedon organized a battalion of local militia to engage the traitor. After the war ended, Weedon remained the inn's proprietor for a while longer, as his efforts were more focused as a member of the local council and a church vestryman. He retired from innkeeping to become the mayor of Fredericksburg in 1785. He built a stunning home he called Sentry Box in Lower Fredericksburg. The house overlooks the Rappahannock River and remains standing to this day. On October 19, 1807, tragedy struck. On the corner of Princess Anne and Lewis Streets lay the body of William Standard, whose funeral was set to take place. It is believed that the chimney at the residence sparked a fire that quickly engulfed the building. The fire quickly spread to the south and east of the town with no mercy. Surprisingly, the small house on the corner that is today referred to as the U. Mercer Apothecary Shop was spared. 3 full blocks and sections of 2 others were completely destroyed. Fortunately, there were no fatalities. William Taylor recalled that the thickest and best improved part of our town is now in ashes. Very upwards of 200 houses are entirely destroyed, and to add that the family calamities of over 100 in distress situation and the consequence thereof. Believe me, this is the most awful scene. The fire completely consumed Weedon's Tavern, known as Benson's by that time. The town would not see destruction again on this scale until the American Civil War. In a town full of historical markers, it's no surprise that the city erected a monument to commemorate Jefferson's presence when he penned the statute. The Fredericksburg City Council elected to commission a stonemason named St. Clair Brooks to recreate the monument. Brooks set about to create a monument that would complement the space while not dominating the surrounding landscape. According to the city's policy on new monuments and interpretive signage, the size and scale of the monument or interpretive sign should fit well within the surrounding context. Emphasis in the city of Fredericksburg is placed on monuments and interpretive signs that do not distract from the historic view and ambiance of the location. The result of Brooks' design was a simple 4-sided column. As a testament to its meaning, stones from churches across the country were acquired to form the memorial. The simple yet engaging marker was unveiled on October 16, 1932. Representatives of 16 of the leading denominations in the United States participated in the commemoration. The monument is the 3rd oldest memorial referring to the religious statute that he drafted. The older 2 memorials are inscribed on his original tombstone at the University of Missouri and his replacement tombstone at Monticello. The monument was originally installed on George Street, but in 1977 it was moved to its present location on Washington Avenue. This area is a historical district within the city. It is located on the original grounds of the Kenmore Plantation, just steps from the mansion on a small, beautiful, secluded parkway that also holds the Mary Washington and General U. Mercer monuments. First established by the Thomas Jefferson Institute for the Study of Religious Freedom during the 1976 U.S. Bicentennial, and later assumed by the Rappahannock Assembly Knights of Columbus, the city has come together to commemorate the bill and Jefferson's role in preserving the religious freedom in a ceremony for all faiths at the Religious Freedom Monument on Washington Avenue. The event symbolizes the healthy dialogue and relationships that exist between the city's different religious groups. The appropriate ceremony includes a parade, the laying of a wreath, an invocation, benediction, and a keynote speech. At the 2007 ceremony, Virginia House Speaker Bill Howe told the crowd, "It is no mistake that the right to religious freedom is in the First Amendment. Religious freedom preceded those other freedoms because without it, no freedom can exist." He also said that the Statute of Religious Freedom gives us the freedom of religion, not from religion. The recognition of Jefferson's efforts is also conducted in March. Since 2002, the 225th anniversary of the writing of his work, the Department of Classics, Philosophy, and Religion has sponsored the annual Jefferson Lecture on Religious Freedom at the University of Mary Washington. The lecture brings to the campus and community a wide range of public figures and distinguished scholars to discuss the nature and importance of religious freedom and the legacy of Jefferson's statute. Fittingly, words from the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom are among those that line the walls of the Jefferson Memorial in Washington, D.C. Its remarkable dome is inscribed on the north portico by his own dedication, "Almighty God hath created the mind free. All attempts to influence it by temporal punishments or burthens are a departure from the plan of the holy author of our religion. No man shall be compelled to frequent or support religious worship or ministry, or shall otherwise suffer on account of his religious opinions or belief, but all men shall be free to profess and by argument to maintain their opinions in matters of religion. I know but one code of morality for men, whether acting singly or collectively." Jefferson is remembered as the founding father whose writing contributions shaped the United States. His works championing values such as freedom of ideas, speech, and religion inspired the Revolution and led to American independence. As the author of the Declaration of Independence and the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom that directly influenced the U.S. Constitution, his words are inscribed on the walls of the foundation of the country he helped create. Presidential scholars and historians generally praise his achievements, including his advocacy of religious freedom and tolerance in Virginia. He was also a proponent of democracy, republicanism, and individual rights. Jefferson's time in Fredericksburg in 1777 resulted in one of the most significant documents ever put forth in the annals of this country's history. His selection of the small yet bustling town on the banks of the Rappahannock River says much for its welcoming atmosphere. The January days the committee spent at the tavern contemplating the fulfillment of their task while taking time to enjoy the surroundings says much for the hospitality of the town. The fact that Jefferson was a visitor on more than one occasion reinforces his affinity for the city and the people. The legacy that he left behind as part of the city's rich history is both remarkable and memorable. Let us not forget this significant moment in our nation's story and appreciate the benefits of Jefferson's contributions to this very day. For the complete story, read Thomas Jefferson and the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom, Faith and Liberty in Fredericksburg by Michael Albrecht. Available online and where books are sold.